Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Can you all see me? Oh, there goes. There's one of the dogs. We got a howler in the family. Well, it is wonderful to see all of you. Thank you for being with me in our quest forward with our second character, Eternalistic Tenno. It is wonderful to see all of you here on stream today. I do apologize for it being a little earlier than I normally stream, but well, you know how I likes me some family time with my mom, so
while I analyze the intelligence profiles of the
I'm gonna go.
Error, not a number.
And
Did the operator enjoy this witticism?
I figured I could start stream a little bit early here, and you know, he's getting closer. He is getting closer. It's gonna be a good time. I can't wait to see what's up with that. But we do have quite the path forward. Oh, and you might have noticed that I like kind of renamed the stream. I just figured, you know what? That's pretty much what we do on Sundays anyhow. We like basically have a chat about Warframe. So why not just in general, it usually starts out in one place and then it'll tail into other things. So I feel like this was a better way to go about it. If anybody from chat is interested in playing, the drill here at this point. Feel free to just join into my my group, or let me know on stream here, and I can get you in. Oh, yeah, Brian. Well, I've kind of slacked a bit on the grinding of the calendar this time around too. I just haven't had a lot of time to grind per se. You know what I'm saying? And at this stage, for me, trying to get for like the next videos that I'm looking to put together, getting all the dialogue, it's impossible already as it is, So given that we haven't had enough cycles for us to technically go through every single essentially relationship you could have had, so I'm going to be using the wiki for a lot of it anyhow. So I'll get it when I can get it. I've definitely got some I think a much more interesting video on tap for this week anyhow. As I finally get into the deal with the man on the wall, because I really do think we have enough information. But I suppose that will be up to you to decide once I present my proof. I will show you the thing here as soon as we get to the. Real quick, can you see that? Lilith 420 85 36. Give me a second here and I'll put it in the chat. Where to go? So I'm looking forward to finally getting that out to you, because wow, it's fast. Excuse me, I gotta help kill my dude here. Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Ah, there he is. Okay. I'm pretty much used to getting carried in every single stream anyhow, so Yeah, why not? As well continue the streak.
Stay focused. There's a heavy unit approaching. Heavy robotic signature detected. Lock and load.
This person was just no bullshit. They just wanted in and out. I'm gonna give you a little.
Target down.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good video coming up. It really is.
Great work, Tenno.
Because there is a lot. There's a lot of information. There's probably a lot more information than anybody actually realizes, right? So that in itself is kind of exciting. All right. Look, we got man a few words. We'll probably put that down too here. Let's see, what else do I need to do to get to Saris? Kill demand. Not Deimos. Gotta go to Mars. And what else do I need? Oh, I can do it. Well, I want to play a little bit. Hello. Dude. Did I do it? Hello, Zerg. How are you today? Hey, thank you very much, everybody, for showing up again. I appreciate you. Let me ask you this. You know, I usually kind of direct stream, but given that we're just kind of doing a thing here, and hey, excuse me.
Now, who would be knocking all the way out here? Operator, I don't think you should answer that.
Is there anything that anybody is interested in, like questions or such? So we've kind of learned that most of the people that I get to play with will just carry me through these missions anyhow. Like I can actually kind of focus more on, you know, if you had anything interesting that you wanted to talk about. Got wow, a lot of familiar faces today. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you being here again. So we got a couple options here. If you don't mind, why don't you help me clean up Deimos for a little bit? We can kind of roll through that. And the lore implications of Jade Shadows. Oh my God, they're enormous. They're you know. Now again, this is hypotheticals. This isn't guaranteed, but if you consider what happens at the end of Jade Shadows and what we're shown, you have to think that there is a reason why DE would specifically like introduce that into the game, that whole concept, because if it doesn't have a point, then it's kind of like it's dressing for dressing's sake. So I'm looking at it from the concept of, you know, essentially there is a legitimate reason why there had to be this entity put into the Warframe universe. And so under that guys, right, we then take into consideration what we learned in Whispers in the Walls with the vessels and what they're capable of. And I always kind of thought to myself that, in theory at least, like, you know, if the man or the Albrecht's plan is essentially just to try to fight the indifference, like the big indifference with a bunch of slightly smaller like vessels that I think we can probably surmise that they have similar abilities, I guess, to Warframes, but we don't really know. The vessels haven't really done anything other than like punch. So I was thinking more on the lines of if, in fact, there is something here. I guess my thought process was the introduction of the child between Warframes offers the potentiality of having a vessel with maybe some enhanced capabilities. Does that make sense? So with that in mind, I feel like that particular entity is like exceptionally important and will be like just it's going to be in the future yet. This isn't, this will be a good bit after the fact because I think there's a lot of story yet that DE wants to get into even before that. But again, that's my personal opinion based upon the context clues that I've seen. So, and with that, the comment there about the vessels being more like a blank canvas, if they are, then a vessel being built upon like a sentient warframe that was never anything but a warframe may allow it to have, like I said, enhanced capabilities that would make it more useful. And then if you pair that entity in a vessel form with, I just kind of hit that by accident. That was not planned. I mean, Doc, that's actually, who knows at this point, Am I the only one still waiting?
Beam device, but they've taken the void key. Find it.
I am curious to see where they go. I actually asked in the member stream last night, where do you think things are headed? Like, what do you think we're going to see at TennoCon this year?
More bugs, more shiny.
Like, do you think it's going to be 1999 related? Do you think it's going to be Origin System related? Do you think it's going to be Tau related? Do you think it's going to be like even Duviri related or Zeraman related? Like, there are so many different like pivotal, let's say, what the hell? We got 20 seconds.
Stay focused. There's a heavy unit.
Oh yeah, I guess with it. So many kind of like untapped areas yet. And I really don't know. Like if you eat any one of them, I'm hoping that there's a more of an ending to what do you call it, to the Hex quest, because I really do think there's something else going on yet, right? We still haven't got to, because right now we still haven't really done anything, and even the Hex themselves kind of realize that they're just being, we're just Groundhog Daying it over and over. Oh, there you go. So with that in mind, like, oh, nice, got Stolen Dreams too. Sweet. What's this? Sure. But isn't that the coolest thing? Like, here we are, we're in a situation where, what, we're 12, 11, technically coming up on the 12th year of Warframe, is that right? Like, coming up, is that right? And the story's probably the best it's been, at least that I can remember. Now, I think Second Dream's reveal was amazing, right? But I think the general concept of where we're at in this like cosmic war now. It's so much bigger than I ever thought it would be, right? But here we are.
This is a mobile defense mission. You must deliver payloads and defend
So-
a number of locations while I break into the network.
I don't even
Be
know.
prepared for heavy resistance. I can't do this without you.
You know what I was
Still
thinking
clear.
too,
No
and I
detection from enemy sensors.
here's a hot take. Do you want one? I'm willing to throw one out that I was thinking about here recently.
Drop me in
That I'm
and
thinking
defend
is
our position.
sorry to adjust my microphone. I'm thinking, while definitely not a probability,
This will take a moment.
it's certainly a possibility.
That was a juggernaut.
I noticed
Lured
that
out by the death
the
of
Tenno,
infested. Lay low and
the
shield
operator,
away
right?
or amp up the fight to draw it out. I am no longer detecting signs.
They don't get a lot of
Move on. You are safe.
cosmetics that are specifically operator related. Did you notice? And I was wondering, because I was talking about this, maybe it was last night, maybe it was all right, but like there is no necessarily like
Continue to defend.
defeat of the man in the wall without the Tenno surrendering in some way its power, because without you know
Stay focused.
the
There's
man in the
enemy.
wall, like I don't even know that the Tenno can exist. Like that's something that maybe isn't like completely fleshed out anywhere in the lore. But given that, you know, they've essentially died so many times now, the Tenno, and even I think there's kind of an allusion to that in the new war, right? Where
Gain access to a terminal.
you see all those different variations of the okay, that's interesting. You see all those different variations of the operator
And
kind
get
of
ready to defend.
falling dead. Like it makes me wonder if, hey Revenant, how are
This
you?
will take a
It
moment.
makes me wonder if at some point down the line, if there's ever going to be any kind of appeasement of the man in the wall, if the Tenno aren't going to have to, the operator that is, aren't going to have to be sacrificed. Because we played the sacrifice quest last night, and it's such a huge aspect of Warframe lore in general, sacrifice. Like it's a big theme that goes on all over the place. And given that
Still
there's
working on it.
everything
Continue to defend.
cosmetic related when it comes to things, are like the major things like armor and stuff like that are mostly Esther, how are you? Well, I don't know, because so here's what I'm trying to kind of put together in my, like, piecing the story together where it doesn't necessarily fit at the moment. I don't know how the Drifter, because this is a piece that we do not have. We don't know how the Drifter
Keep moving.
was connected with, like, the operator, and thus if somehow, and I don't even necessarily know if I believe this, but if somehow
Terminal spotted.
the Drifter's power
Load me and prepare to
is
defend.
almost like a piece of it that it's lost for good because of the
Tenno.
paradoxical
This will take a moment.
idea of the Drifter in itself. That even if the man in the wall goes away, not necessarily goes away, because I don't think the man in the wall can go away, but it's like appeased, if you will. That it will, the adult version will continue to be able to use the power, with the indifference being essentially sated for what it the portion of its deal. Because what we talked about last night is
Still working on it.
which will
Continue to defend.
be more relevant to everybody very soon, is Faustian bargains,
Stay focused.
and how
There's a
they
heavy unit approaching.
are very, very rarely, well, never, even in the stories where the the person who made the bargain, quote unquote, wins. They don't ever win. It's more of a break-even type situation because they have to live with some kind of curse or something like that, and there's always some kind of limitation to their existence that they can't have a normal existence, even when they somehow like outsmart the devil, if you will, right? And I think in many ways you can see the illusions between the Faustian bargain and what's going on with what's happening in Warframe. And like,
Another job well executed.
well, we could, but I wonder what happens if we close that door. Have there been other big changes? Yeah, there's all kinds of different stuff that have changed. But a lot of it, I think, could be looked at as them kind of like making tweaks to certain things. I noticed there's a lot of visual when upgrades happen in certain things, just by default, right? There's more detail on certain things, and some additional detail comes out that actually is like a piece of story, like world building that you couldn't necessarily see before, but now you can see it. But I feel like at the end of the day, I don't necessarily know if the void door being closed is going to suffice for anybody, because somebody's going to try to open it up again. That's the reality of it. I think the only way that the end occurs, at least with the man in the wall and the void saga, if you will, is that we come to some kind of accord with the man in the wall. And if the man in the wall has a deal that he made, and if this is the devil, quote unquote, and in that regard, in how it's being framed, and how the devil basically always gets what he wants in the end. I'm starting to wonder if we will have to sacrifice the operator, or maybe the drifter. I don't know, but one or the other moving forward, as again within the themes of the game itself, and thus also probably making it a little bit easier for DE2 that they don't have to have two different things that they're monitoring, which it's kind of one of the reasons why I believe that it'll have to be the Tenno or the operator that goes, because technically the operator's already kind of like something different to begin with. And I think that with any new players that play the Hex Quest, you can't really do the romance thing with the child,
That was a juggernaut. They were lured out by the death of Infested. Lay low, and it should go away, or amp up the fight to draw it out.
What do you mean, you need to grind a month to get 10,000 standing?
Be wary. The creature has grown unfathomably strong through centuries of absorbing matter and self-replication. Heavy infestation ahead.
Well, the only thing that the man in the wall really wants is the Tenno, as we understand it. I mean, that's the reality of it right there. And it's not going to be satiated until it gets it. That's why I don't think that there's a win in the traditional sense against the indifference. Like it's like it's a god, like even demiurge like, and two, the Tenno's power and ability to continue to exist seems to stem from that entity as it is. Well, I mean, there's that too. I mean, it's definitely not impossible for the Tenno to be a future variation, and we do kind of like the circle, like the Raziel circle in Legacy of Kain, which I'm totally down for that because that was, you know, one of the few stories that I actually enjoyed time travel with. Oh, wait, you're talking about it becoming like a live entity here. Oh, man. I don't, does that suck, though? Is that good or bad? Just gonna shoot some of this stuff and let them. So you mean like it would become its own real boy? Oh, how about that? Okay, you know what? I like that. I actually like that better. Then they can keep the indifference. Yeah, like it gives it a body. All right. Fine. I'll take it. I'll sign me up. Sold. Yeah, but I think what PG is saying is that instead of it like being ethereal and moving from body to body, it actually having its own like real body that it doesn't have to transfer into, but rather this is its form that it like actually gets to live, because there's a lot of inferences to the indifference wanting to be here, like wanting to experience this existence. You know, so it's not like that's not a concept that isn't, you know, it's kind of already baked into the lore to begin with, so it would work well.
Target down. Assassination contract complete. Great work, Tenno.
Yeah. Limbo, as I understand, Limbo does it would have to use void energy because, well, that's an interesting point though. But I would think that it would have to, because we've now kind of figured out that anybody that uses portals seems to use the void as the portal, right? Hmm. Yeah. I like that. Hmm.
Tenno, there's a time-limited mission alert available. Check
Mm.
navigation.
That's a Beachy. That's a good point too. That's like that's one of the steps that you have to do in order to. Oh, you know what? Is that it? Hmm. Hold on, I gotta write that down on my blackboard here. Pardon me.
Ordis keeps a tidy ship and is therefore reluctant to allow animals on board. In Ordis's experience, animals do not eat so much as reload.
Take over just like the Queen wanted to do. Um, I don't know if Parvos was the first to contact Wally. I actually think that we it could even go back further to, see, the I think the major point of this argument or this discussion comes into play in regards to the concept of continuity, because there is there's like a lot of confusion on if continuity was available before the man in the wall, um, before Albrecht made contact with the man in the wall. Okay. So there's kind of two schools of thought. There's the first school that I'm kind of more on board with. The continuity was available after the void was discovered in its current nature by Albrecht, okay, which would mean that most likely Albrecht was the first to be to and the only reason why I say this is because like we don't have a timeline of like when Orkin lived. Like it's quite possible and actually probably more probable that even though they don't look like it, Entradi is most likely older than Parvos Granum. Okay? And I would bet that because of kind of the way that things worked out that obviously Ballas is older than Parvos Granum, but he looks good because of continuity. I don't necessarily know that Parvos was ever given access to continuity because it was kind of held by the Uvan clerisy in this like serious little group there that only they could decide essentially who could go and who couldn't. So let's see. I really do think that if you want my personal opinion, it opens up, and the reason why is because also Albert kind of talks about that people believed that void technology was a dead end in the Requiem, and I can't believe that if they were able to get something like continuity from the void, how they would look at the void as a kind of a dead end thing, because that was like Albert kind of being the one that gave it a purpose in the Orican's existence, a purpose and then some. And I think that it's weird because a lot of people, I believe that the Requiems, when you listen to them, they're not in order of any. There's a couple different ways. Like the first one is taken from the perspective of the same timeline as like the last two, or like the same point in time, and then you go back in time for the requiems in between, and so it's confusing because it looks like it sounds like if you take everything in like chronologically from just like the first requiem to the eighth requiem, it almost appears like the way that Intradi's saying it is that the continuity may have come before him. But I just look at it from see that's what I'm saying. Like I personally don't believe that Entradi took. I think this is an interpretation thing, but I'm going to keep going with it because there's other telltale signs. Like I said, the extended arm, things like that, that is a sign of continuity that Albert does not have. And, I think just because he said at the end, now or ever again, doesn't mean that he took it. Like essentially, he's just saying, I'm never doing this because of, and then he explains now or ever again, like I'll never try that. Um, and I think a lot of people believe that the continuity was the thing that healed him after his encounter with the wall itself. And we come to learn in the Lost Notes that it was actually Lloyd who kind of put him back together, which to me says that the Orkin had significant healing capability before they ever had access to the void. Like they had figured stuff out, which they were in a super, uh, advanced civilization even before that. The void just kind of pushed them to the next level, if you will. And that's how they were able to get all kinds of other things with space travel and like you could say that the void unlocked, well, I mean everything. Without the void there's no eternalism. Oh, see, I think that Albert was part of the elite though. I mean, how else would he have afforded everything that he had? I don't think that he was part of the elite before void technology. He was a scientist. He was your run of the mill scientist. But once he did what he did, I can't see him, especially
The system continues to
because there
fall into
are
chaos.
statues
Check
of
navigation
Albert
for active
in
invasions.
places other than his places. There are voids in essentially on Earth and such. There are void towers with statues of Albert and Trotty. I feel like the Orcans specifically would not make a statue of anybody that wasn't of the highest. Yeah, and I mean, I just personally think that I know this is gonna sound weird, but like him coming out with the new look and everything, it's all in the notes. He went into, and remember, if you want like a little bit of an idea, they actually give there's a diagram what Entrati walked into the wall looking like, because they actually show what the man in the wall looks like, and that's what he even said. It was me. It was a copy of me, and he's wearing old Orcan garb. Now, when he comes out after being decimated by the wall, right? Because, and again, it just goes to show again, it's these little things that kind of put me off about him as a scientist. When he's in, when he's passing into the wall, as he's in the Saraglass Bell, right? Due to his own childlike nature, he pushes on the front of the bell. He actually falls over and pushes into it. And that's what ends up forcing the thing to hit and crack. And that's what exposes him and essentially creates this whole problem in the first place. It's these little mistakes and like how he described himself and stuff like that, bef- like prior to his, finding the wall, that it like there's a reason why DE is putting these little hinties, little slices in there. It's meant to show that he is not this infallible person. And then you get into a lot of his lost notes with how he goes about the caveat and everything else like that. Ah, yeah. There's a bunch of stuff. If you actually go into the wall, the Trotty's labs, I mean, you really have to spend some quality time in there. Go on like one of the lower exterminate missions where it doesn't matter, and you're gonna see some creepy stuff. You know, it's just one of the best. Like it's one of the best designed areas in the game. They're just sorry. It's so much fun. Oh, absolutely. Like without question, Albrecht was like he was a standard scientist before. Oh, I bet there is. I bet there are, and that's the whole idea. Is that I think at the end of the Requiems, when we see, or when he, explains about, the the multitude unfolds, right? I personally believe, and I said this before, I've said this a couple times to anybody that saw my video on the hex, and I do apologize to those in the group right now for not playing here, but I want to kind of focus on this for a second. That these little things at the end of the quests, I feel like they're all starting to match up. And at the end of the hex quest, like the end after, the the regular just Warframe player in me wants to believe that that was Lloyd and either the Drifter or perhaps even in Trotty. Which man, I want to believe that last one, but there's just no reason for me to believe in Trotty. But one of those two people was the one that inhabited the vessel at the end and gave the two little fingers, Doop. But given the end of Whispers in the Walls and them kind of like revealing that it's moving between different forms with Rusalka, and kind of like there's a lot of data on what the man in the wall can do now with a person, and it's expanded past what we believed. Okay, I can tell you that, at least what I believed what the man in the wall could do. It's very different. um and it's a lot more worse. It's a lot more worse. I don't know the right English there. It's the worst of the worst. um and it troubles me that throughout the quest, right, we were continually shown that Lloyd was the indifference, right? And I'm sorry, I can't believe that I just can't believe that at the end there that's that I feel like I feel like it's the same thing that Warframe always does. They do this thing where they match themes against stuff, and it would match Lloyd and the indifference in the vessel that the indifference already took over at one point, and we have not up to this point. Um, those two acknowledging each other seems very, very reminiscent of Whispers in the Walls, where our operator and Albrecht's adversary are shown together. Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering too now, is because we have this new piece of information that's hopefully going to come in March. There's this tiny piece of data that it's so important that we saw at TennoCon, right? And that was there's a voice line when we move from 1999 from doing something, and there's the Tenno or the Technosite coda that shows up in the origin system, and it's the online boys who we all kind of know have been cloned. Like the Technosite coda are actually like the cloned versions of the online actual humans. those poor souls, who knows what's going on with them at this point. But they say, if management says something to the effect of like, another passive aggressive smile from management, and they're upset with it. It's like, I'm gonna be upset if I see another passive aggressive smile from management. And we all know what a passive aggressive smile has been. Yeah. Thinking about Tenno. Zerg, do you remember that line? I can't remember exactly what was said. Does anybody remember what that line was? So, if the man in the wall has now, through potentially what we did in the Hex Quest by connecting us to the tech rod, who are in theory the like the prime tech rot. I mean, because that's what they really are. They are, and even the Scoundrel, like, they don't differentiate the hex between the rest of the tech rot. They're all the same thing. So, if we're saying here that the void has now infected something, that it would appear, at least in our timeline, was not necessarily like controlled by the void, maybe like a conduit to the void, if you will. Because I do think there's got to be some level of that with how the Tenno utilize the void with the Warframe's abilities and such, and enhance them. Because that's essentially what happened in the Hex Quest. We enhanced. We essentially enhanced their capabilities at the very end and allowed them to kind of like push forward a little bit, if you will, as we do with Warframes. So, what you got there is, you have almost an idea of, okay, let's see, if management gives us one more passive aggressive smile, I'm going to snap. Yeah. Look, I mean, that's not, you have this concept of the void is now closing in. It's becoming like connected to everything now. So, if the void is connected to everything, there's no way of getting away from it. And it's almost, now check this out. I love this. Ready? This is this is the good stuff. Are you ready? I'm going to hit you with something. Now, you've heard me say many times that there are so many parallels to the Matrix, especially the Matrix 2, right? This is almost like what Smith does in the second Matrix, where he starts copying. He becomes a part of everything. He infects one system, but then he moves into different systems, like when he actually gets into the quote unquote real world, when he goes into Bane, right? So now, like, he's in that world, and he can manifest there, like, and that's a place that he's not supposed to be, right? And the fact that he overtakes everything, like, it really does kind of give you this concept of, do you know what I'm saying? Like, we might be there. We're like, and this is, I want to go here, so I am biased towards this. Just let me put that out there up front. But yeah, like, everything may start to occur to be part of it, and then we're just going to be, and think about it too thematically. What? Well, I mean, and Hester, in this regard, just think of it as it's flipped around, because really, in regards to this, the Tenno had to be exposed to the void for it to make a Tenno copy, right? So it made the copy of the Tenno, but it made the copy of, using the void. Yeah, Peachy, that's wonderful right there. Yeah, did you see that? Did you see Rebecca wearing? She was literally wearing Trinity's gear from the Matrix. I mean, come on. Yeah, so essentially, we can literally say, I really do think we can say with a good bit of definitive uh, wording that Hulvania is meant to infer field or forest of hell. That is crazy. And I mean, it's not like the indifference doesn't say that during the quest. It literally says, you're in hell. You're never getting out. So, I mean, it's not like we're going super ridiculous. I mean, that's what the indifference called it. So, but I mean, do you see the potential of where we're headed with all this moving forward? This is delicious. And that's, oh man, because I really do. I think that's what's going to start occurring. Because I actually have a list here. Let's pull it up. Let's check it out. And maybe, oh, you know what? Good. This is actually perfect. Y'all can help me out here. Let's talk about something for a second. As far as I can tell, these are the people that we either know definitively have had some kind of contact with the void, right? Or have made a deal, right? So here's what I got so far. Maybe you can help me out. I have Archimedean Yonta because she saw a copy of herself. She talks about it. And I would add in probably all the vagabonds because of their whole experience and how they're still alive and whatnot. So you can probably put, has the indifference ever lied? Oh, check this out. Maybe. And it might have been right at the bargain. But, I'm going to save that one for the video. I need something to bring you to the video, okay? But that's a really, Diego, that was a good one to pick up on. Okay. So we got, like I said, let's just say all of the holdfasts. We have to have Lloyd now, which I think that was, maybe not, but that was Lloyd. I think he's in. We have all of the Cavia. They have all been literally resurrected. We have Rusalka. Right? And I wonder if, due to the closeness of Rusalka and Victor, if it wouldn't have had the same kind of interaction. Now, again, there is no reason there's nothing in the lore that says that Victor is part of the indifference. All I'm saying is there's a scene where they're literally right next to each other. If the story is moving this way, right, it's entirely possible that Victor could also have been, but we'll put that in like the kind of, that's way maybe, right? So we have Barokatir. Barokatir was an actual deal maker, right? And for all intents and purposes, when you really think about it, you never really know if when you go to Bro each week, or each other week that like it could be his other there. But he's a definite. We have the Lotus. Now we don't know exactly what the story is there. We have multiple interactions with the Lotus and the Man on the Wall. At least it could be as deep as her making a deal for the safety of the Tenno, or that deal could have included that if you include the safety of the Tenno, could you not include that as part of a deal that potentially gave her her stuff in the first place? I don't know. That's speculation. We didn't do about Albert yet, but obviously Albert and Trotty, right? Illyria, because we know from the beginning of Heart of Deimos that she talks about the quote unquote dream where she sees her father inside the untimed door, rapping at it. And then she went in with her husband and they couldn't find him. And everybody thought it was a dream. But Lloyd specifically says, no, you did all that. So those two were definitely in there. Now, did the void come to the father? I don't know, but at least it's been there. You have Executor Tuval, most likely, being a member of the Uvan Clarity. And here's Clerisy, and here's another little interesting thing. Within the lore of Varuna, we've come to find out that continuity with Kuva on its own is not enough. That there are, get ready, ritual words that must be spoken in order for the entire ritual to move forward. Now, I wonder, do you think those ritual words have a particular sound and ring to them if you were there to hear them? And given that so many, I mean, there's so much to it, because when you look at what transpired and the idea of the religion of the void, because people, I mean, obviously, like the corpus, literally, that's part of what they do. They literally praise the void. The void is their god. Right? So they've been praying, in reality, to the Man in the Wall.
New alert marked on navigation,
Ah.
Tenno.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And a little bit of that will get into, I don't want to get too much. PG, if you want to share a little bit about, the etymology of the lotus in regards to that whole thing. Oh, yeah, Mathila and Scythel, without question. I mean, you know me, I the whole Duviri thing. Oh, well, and again, that's another thing. We don't know who the vagabond is actually appeared in front of in Duviri, but we do know that there's an entity there, right? Here you go. Thank you, PG. No, that's the void. I mean, that's they all one of the things about the corpus is that's their big thing. They pray to the void for profit, and that came essentially from Parvos's initial teachings, who we hear about with Parvos, which is most likely another one, because Parvos talks about this voice that he keeps hearing. Um, it speaks of desire. Hester, that actually there could be a, like some kind of correlation there. I don't know. I don't know enough about, unfortunately, Dishonored. That's that's a free game on. Well, it's not a free game, but it's on Game Pass. I'm gonna check it out. I think I've said that before. I need time. I don't know. Nora is her own thing. I don't know. I don't know what to even think about Nora. Okay, I wonder if Nora isn't DE, because Nora doesn't make any sense at all. She's been everywhere. It's one of the reasons why I've never done a video on her, because I don't know what the heck she is. She just doesn't fit into anything. She's been to everything. She's gone everywhere. She's the only time she's ever been captured, as I understand it, is by Nihil during the whole glassmaker thing, and it was really because it was like the first time that she was actually like sticking your nose into something with us. But you would think, given how, I mean, she's literally she's in everything. She Oh yeah, Dante. That's another one. Dante is most likely has some kind of void counterpart. It's just the way it is. So now you have, and we know that it's not like um, the void can't take control of warframes, because it can surely take control of vessels. Doesn't seem to have any problem doing that. Opens up a lot of questions for a lot of different things. Even something like the new Strange, right? It opens up questions on the new Strange. It opens up questions of the second dream. You know how we all have this concept of wondering who moved the frame at the end. Well, maybe it was the indifference. Like anymore, if that was needed to move its plan forward, then that is exactly what it would do. And if the Tenno are an integral part of the indifference's plan moving forward, right? The only thing I would say against that is it didn't seem like we had awakened the indifference, but that might not necessarily matter, because, as if you remember, during the second dream, and they specifically call this out during the second dream, which is very interesting and actually kind of moves into this theme. This is the first time that we are introduced to the concept of the Tenno hearing voices. And in fact, it was essentially the reason why, or it's a major reason why, they were put into the cryopods, or the transference pods in the first place, because they were hearing voices. And that's what Margulis was attempting to quell. Now, what were these voices saying? Well, in my next video, I think I have a pretty good idea. Hera's a whole other one. How does Hera have a warframe? Or I mean, how does Hera get to Rel? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how does Hera? Because warframes don't make themselves, right? So somebody had to create Hera, and then somebody had to get Hera to Rel. Now, who has the capability to do such a thing? All right, here we'll play a little bit now that I got to Let's see. Keep things simple. The outsider's a void god who literally is bored and chooses people in random, bestows upon them his mark along with period. Ooh. Dude, I want to live in that world. I want to be one of the ones. Well, maybe Ballast, but also, who else has access to Warframes? Actually, King of Fire, this was the reason why I changed the name of the weekly stream to weekly Warframe chat, because I feel like you never know what you're going to get in one of these things. So it's basically like, unless there's something very specific I want to talk about, who knows? We could go anywhere. But here's a crazy part, Archon. That's an interesting one to bring up, right? Zignax, I think I do. But Archon, the Red Veil, they worship Rel. But what if they weren't worshiping Rel? I'd love to see an underwater infested boss battle. That'd be cool as hell. I mean, we already said, amazingly enough, Warframe already has this capability. I'm going to hop in here and play a little bit so you guys can actually watch something other than my character just standing there for the next half hour. Yeah, when did they start worshiping him? And isn't it funny that the information that the Red Veil gets from the Void, right, is all Void related? Or, I mean, not from the Void, from Rel, is all Void related. It's all information on the Void.
Distract the infested while a lone Tenno operative hunts for supplies. Set off the alarms to start.
Okay. Oh, yeah, from last night. Ward of Feeble Spirits. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Crap, I gotta write that down on my blackboard.
The infested are releasing toxic
Or my
spores
whiteboard
into
here.
the
Crap.
area. The emergency life support I'm delivering is your only chance for
I
survival.
gotta burn that in a minute. If I read it like 4 or 5 times, I should be able to remember. But I think you guys can all see where I'm going with the concept of this whole situation, and it very much does appear like we are headed towards, like I said, a matrix. Void infects everything. Because remember, what we learned from the ARG is that the Void can even infect now, or quote unquote the Tech Rot, this new version of Tech Rot, can infect through actual like data, through songs and through video games. Like, it's not, it's actually, it's almost like ethereal in nature.
Life support on the way.
So, oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that, which, well, I mean, if you go in through Entradi's labs, you kind of see that there's more than one untimed door. Not to mention, you also get the whole like really disturbing thing that it looks like Entradi was taking those samples and just making random body parts too to like power the lab, and
Activating it will buy you
or
more time.
I'm guessing it wasn't actually Entradi, more some other creature. And I think it even falls in line to an argument that I think it really doesn't matter whether or not you believe in like God or not. But the concept of human beings mapping out like how we do things and stuff like that, like I don't think, I should say, is essentially us figuring out the blueprint that intelligent design would have created. And if you can get behind that concept, it's very much in the same line of how the void and the people around it have kind of, come to understand it in its different forms. And like there's certain people like Entrati who have come to understand this by all rights, like this cosmic power. But he clearly can write equations and shit on the walls, and he knows how to recreate it. So he's taken the power of the gods, if you will, and he's mapped it out to a method by which just a normal human being can recreate. And I think there's a parallel there that's kind of an interesting kind of thought to ponder, if you will, right? Well, not to mention, you said that the void, the people in the chains of hair from the Red Veil. Not to mention that they turn into those like same type of like shadow creatures that are initially attacking us when we go to the void for the first time, as we're trying to get our Warframe when in the second dream. And I would assume those were void creatures too, right? So it all, if you really think about it, everything's kind of like just falling into place. Like the story's all kind of congealing together very nicely. If you want to subscribe to the concept of the void being kind of like the magic of the Warframe universe and everything kind of tapping into it in order to do the otherworldly things that can be done. How about that? Okay, so that's what I was actually thinking about. But how do? I wonder if can you do that? Because that would be. I was actually wondering about doing like an actual, like a real podcast for the first time this week, where instead of me playing, I would just be kind of sitting there talking about Warframe. But my problem is I don't know what to present on screen. Like, do you know what I'm like? Can anybody want to have suggestions with that? Because I would love. It's something. It would be, to me. You can tell. Like I can sit there and BS for. Talking is what I do best. So me talking for 3, 4, 5 hours straight about a topic that I love is, it's easy. And I'd like to do that, but what do you think? Like, what would be a good thing to present? I'm headed to the extraction, by the way. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Gonna need this. This is a new character. Would Oh, good call, Laura. That's the one I should. That actually will probably get the most views, So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I'm just gonna sit here regardless. So we can all concentrate. I was actually thinking that's probably the one to do. So what I was thinking about potentially doing was just myself, like recording just 3 hours of BS content, like just me just playing for 3 hours, right? And then layering it. But is that cool? Because I really do think you got. I think I could do something like that, and I really do think people would enjoy it. Like, because it's the one thing I do best is not shut up. Hmm. Yeah, Velta, and 1999 is a very odd situation overall. It almost seems like it's built on magic, and there's this entity that is, for whatever reason, is plastered all over the place, presenting himself as a god
This reminds
with
the
the
operator
the
to
literal
take
word
time to
believe
accept.
underneath it.
Pressure creates
And yet
targets, yes.
everybody
It
seems
also
that
creates
would be the equivalent in our world of you seeing like a poster of like Jesus Christ or Muhammad or Buddha, you know, just posters everywhere, all over the place, you know, with like, hey, you know, come see me. And I'm sorry, to me that just seems odd. And somebody actually brought this up in one of my other streams, was that we haven't even got into that concept yet, because the quest really doesn't talk much about the idea of Entrati being, let's say, viewed as this entity. But it would have to be that way with all the information that we visually see within the area. It would have to be that way, because people would just pull that stuff down otherwise, you know? Like, they just wouldn't leave stuff up like, oh, hey, you know, it's, let's see, what's this one? Oh, rescue? Crap. I gotta do it, because I want to get to the void. I'll be honest with you. If you're telling me that me putting an image up for 3 hours straight is acceptable, that's just less work that I have to do. My my thing is that acceptable? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, it's I'll take as little work as possible, because it's just more time I can devote to other things. Do I think we'll learn more about Soul? Yeah, I do. I think the only thing, I don't necessarily know if it's going to come in what I would say like a quest form. I think it's going to come in kind of like what we're already learning about it with through the KIM system and whatnot. I could definitely see that's where I could see that being kind of a vessel where we're going to get a lot of lore in the future. You know, because it does kind of give this almost personalized idea of it, but at the same time you get some interesting information too. I think I never would have guessed that a dating sim would have been this enjoyable in one of these games. Like, to me, that's just unbelievable. Hey, Eternally, how are you, bud? All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll put something together this week, because that actually wouldn't be very hard to do.
Detect you, they will surely initiate the execution sequence. Bypass complete. You may proceed. This is the jail. Our hostage is in one of these cells.
Yeah, no shit, Lotus.
I knew you would come.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Prisoner located. We need to get them back to command in one piece. Find your way to the exits, and don't leave the subject behind.
You got it, lady.
I need a weapon.
You don't. You don't need a weapon. You son of a bitch. I'm still like wondering.
The
Oh
captive was
man.
liberated. You will be rewarded
Well, like,
for this
okay, so getting
sacrifice.
kind of back to what we were talking about, like, the Hex would also be part of the group that would have been, at least in some way, connected with the man in the wall, right? Over everything that occurred. And I mean, now that it has, like, their genetic codes and crap through its, uh, by the way, not just its genetic codes, but their genetic codes through its preferred language. By the way, we translated it for it too, just in case anybody was wondering. So, so well, the thing is that what we come to find out, though, that was the idea that this person just wanted to or this entity just wanted a finger back, right? That's it. That's all we needed. But what we learned through the Hex quest specifically, that's not it. We learned something very important. It
Ordis is half
isn't
angry.
just angry
I may
at
require maintenance
Entradi.
after all.
It is angry at the Orican because it doesn't just single Entradi out, and it uses plural language when it talks about its quote unquote pain, which it by all rights describes, which is a bad thing. You don't want a demiurge type cosmic level entity talking about pain, because revenge is bad. It's very bad, right? So with that idea, you now have to kind of ask, what is the, well, I'm not doing it anymore because I'm going to be giving up too much of the video. This is going to be a good video this week, let me tell you. This is a favorite one of mine. Ooh, new ship. I'll put that on
Later.
because it's, like I said, it's a question that I've had forever, and I think everybody else has had forever. And after going through all the quests again and kind of looking at information, I think I figured it out. I think I figured out our deal, what it wants, and even something that I alluded to, a potential loophole, which is going to be really fun. There is something that I noticed, and I can't get it out of my head, about the initial, what we learn in the new war and what the man on the wall says to us specifically. So good. So good. Put that on. Gotta get, I gotta do them. I gotta buy colors here at some point. Do.
Some fascinating choices.
Thanks, Sortis. I appreciate you, buddy. Do. You know how I am. I just pretty much do one color for everything. Very boring. Very boring. That's good enough for me. Boop. I mean, that's the thing. You would think in certain. One question you have to ask is why did it help Ballast so much in the new war and the lead up? Like, what was the point? Because without the man on the wall, we don't get the paracesis. We never even see it, which I've always found really interesting. Oh, capture, nice. Yeah, we gotta do this. We gotta do this one. We gotta get to the void because there's. So now I'm getting into the things that, the grindy aspects of the new character thing. Um, I'm gonna have to join a clan to get my Arcwing launcher segment, right? Which is, I'm sure that's not gonna be a problem, but at the same time, that's the thing that I gotta do, which kind of sucks. Which again, if you watched my last video, it'd be something that we wouldn't have to worry about if I was just doing the second character and we were going through and doing all the quests, right? But then again, if we were only doing that, I would have gotten maybe like 2-3 streams out of it, and so it's fun. Where are you going? Do.
Excellent work. We'll interrogate the captive back at base. Your part is done here, Tenno.
Well, I mean, I could, but then I'm going to miss out on all the, See, that's the thing, and what sucks about it is, if you're a new player and somebody taxis you to a place that is outside of your range, right? The problem ends up coming in is that you get stuff that you can't necessarily use or you don't have resources for. So Warframe does kind of make it, it's weird that in ways you kind of have to, you don't have to, but for the most, I'd say, even experience, you kind of just got to go through the way that the DE Lord intended, I guess is the best way you could say. Because if you skimp here, if I don't do some kind of like grinding right now, I'm going to get to a point here in a couple planets where I don't have anything of what I need, and then I'm going to have to go back and do this stuff anyhow. So it's one of those. I'm trying to follow here. Hey, Highlander, how are you, bud? Good to see you. Aquilus, I wonder what else he's done with our body while we were knocked out. That's kind of scary, really, when you think.
Tenno, a new alert has begun. It will be marked on navigation.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I feel like you're better off if you, even in the second time around, just do the star chart. You know what to do. You know how easy the quests are. How to get through things the quickest. What quests you can just roll right through, and ones you actually have to do stuff with. So. Do I think they will expand on the cavia? Yeah, I do. I actually do think they're going to expand on the cavia. I think that Oh, you know what? Something we were talking about earlier. That could be. We could go back to Entradi's Labs for TennoCon this year. That is a completely legitimate place, given that everything's going on. So, like, it could be, like, realistically, 1999. The Origin System, Entradi's Labs. I'm trying to think where else. It all really depends on where you want to go with it. I mean, there's all kinds of these holes that are open now that we have the whole. You brought up this whole thing with Parvus Granum. And now Granum's just been sitting out there, right? Doing his thing, accumulating people. So that's another threat that's out there that's... I don't know, like if you do the end of the what do you call it? The Deadlock Protocol, and you hear Entradi's voice, or I mean Parvus's voice at the end. It sounds a lot like Entradi's voice at the end of the Hex quest. Whenever the second time that we go through for what do you call it? For after connecting with the hex. Oh. Okay. I gotta admit, this is another thing that I noticed after we did this last quest. I don't think I'm wrong on this, but those of us who were there when Heart of Deimos first launched, did we get blueprints
Prepare for life support.
for all of the pieces of the Necromech right away? I thought we just got the actual, like, just the Necromech itself, and then we had to go and grind for the parts for each one of the Necromech pieces. Or am I misremembering this?
I've delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
So the fact that they gave us all, that they gave this character like blueprints for everything, that's unique. That's new. Damn, if that's, oh wow, that's a lot of grinding that I thought I had to do that I didn't have to do. Well, I mean, in that regard, I'm glad, because I anything that stops players from engaging, especially new players. There he is, right there, with his messed up one hand. You got finger missing there too, maybe? No. I guess the whole hand's missing, so more than a finger.
Another life support capsule is now available.
No, I don't think Wally actually existed. I think in the way that we understand him now, this like entity with like personal goals, if you will, like personal agenda. I think that the Void was essentially this, you know, like almost like an indifferent creator, right? And then the introduction of Entrati did something unnatural and created this personification that the Void itself, if you can, I mean, again, this is just me thinking, if you can think of like, you know how, I think we talked about this last week, you know, the concept of like dark energy or dark matter that, you know, supposedly is kind of like fills in the gaps between planets and stuff like that. Like, if you can think of that as kind of now a living entity, and it can now create an avatar based upon its interactions with, I assume, living entities. But it's like base mindset, right? Like its core programming is essentially inspired by
The operative has just
Entrati in his
Keep up the good work.
worst
When you are
form.
ready, go to extraction.
And if you can think of like all the excess and really indifference of all of the the Orcan, because the way that they treated the rest of the citizenry as like secondary or underling, or not inferior, would imply indifference, by its own nature.
Another job well executed.
42 is the right answer. Just so you know, that's a fact. That's a scientific fact. Everybody, if you don't know that, it's true. Yeah, I did have I had that conversation with Eleanor. It was a difficult one. It was yeah. And again, it asks you a lot of questions about the situation. Like, we're in this reality where manipulation is a significant thing. So, are the things that, like, say, Eleanor is seeing, are they things that she's uncovering on her own, or are they things that she is being shown specifically? And if they are things that she's being shown specifically, then you have to then move one point further and then ask, is there a manipulation involved? And unfortunately, the thing that we're all talking about here is just such an agent of manipulation that to just assume that it really wants to tell you the truth in any regard at any particular time, unless the truth advances its goals, which is, I think, in the same breath, exactly like Albert and Trotty. And Trotty wants to embrace the truth at all costs, but he only wants to really like acknowledge it when it benefits him. When the cold truth, it goes against him, and it's something that maybe he shouldn't do. Well, if it's something that he desires, then he's willing to cut corners. It's okay. And I think we see that exact same kind of mentality with the Void, with the original adversary, if you will. And that's the problem, because I think there's another discussion to even be had, in that if the Tenno were the first entity to have been in contact with the Void, right? That we might be talking about a very different thing, and we might be talking more so on the lines of an existence that mirrors more of how Duviri exists, right? Because in reality, Dominus Thrax is a copy of the Drifter. It's just in how you want to interpret that copy. So, in that regard, it makes you wonder if the Void entity had come into contact with someone that was a little bit less douchey at the start, or maybe even somebody who was douchey but then reformed and like kind of understood the error of their ways, even, which may have been be even the best outcome, even more so than an innocent child, because an innocent child would obviously have its own problems with. Sorry, I'm gonna adjust my microphone again here real quick. An innocent child would have some issues with understanding the complexities of life, and I don't necessarily know that a lot of people would be what one would call comfortable knowing that a God was living over us and ruling over us that had the mentality of a 12-year-old. So if a demiurge is to take on let's say, a position of a mortal, a reformed Albrecht Trotty, which technically we've never seen, because the only thing he's ever done that's reformed in any way, shape, or form is sort of kind of apologize to Lloyd, but not really, because he wrote it down. He couldn't even do it face to face, just wrote it for him, and so as far as Tao goes, I don't know, because the only person that ever seemed to really want to go to Tao were the Orkin, like the Orkin 7 elite in that regard. And not in the elite of the society, but in those specific, the executors. And I wonder, again, this, you kind of have to have seen my take on the red pill of the Hex Quest to kind of understand all the ins and outs of this, but especially the second time that we go through, but even the first time, there's things about that Entrati that don't make sense. So first we have the idea that the man in the wall just scoops him up and takes him away. I mean, that's something that you can actually see during the quest. I mean, you may need to slow it down a little bit, but he essentially, and in that regard, he also takes us with him too at that point. So all three of us, the Drifter, Entrati, and the man in the wall, are scooped up whenever the man in the wall says, what is it? Foss, or whatever. And then we cut to the Hex in the back rooms, which I really don't know how they got in there. But regardless, I mean, I guess once that path was established, it could just be a path that's always there for everybody. But the Tenno, or the Drifter, is actually up on the Zerman, and the Albrecht that we see is completely devoid of injury. Was it Zata Fas Zata? Okay, that's it. And I don't understand that part. I don't understand why Entrati has to shoot us and, the Hex, because he gets what he wants. Even if the Drifter dies there, he gets what he wants. He just wanted that area to blow up. So if to be honest with you, Entrati killing the Drifter or shooting the Drifter and then forcing putting him in a place to have the realization to begin again, literally pushes him further away from his initial goal of needing the spark that is rare in this timeline. Which, again, I don't understand. If you went to 1999 to get away from the indifference, why is the indifference here? Okay, fine. It got here. Good enough. Why did you go to a timeline that had this resource in a rare thing? Why didn't you go to some other time that it was common? Oh, and that was another one. Kill her. What? What do you mean, kill her? What am I supposed to do with this? What is that going to accomplish if I kill this thing with a gun? And so, I mean, it seems like he can do things just fine with the void. And it just kind of comes back to like my whole idea of there's a lot of this feeling thing that goes into it. It's almost like Entrati and the Indifference are using 1999 as a kind of like a kind of tug of war, like an emotional struggle, but almost like check this out. Almost like two parents fighting over their kid in a divorce, where essentially they're both trying to force the child to make a choice based upon their point of view. And I mean, the other thing what happened to Entrati? Did the void just give him up? Because again, unless that was us at the end saying something to Lloyd, "Hey, we did it," Doo-hoo. But at the same time, d- uh, should we be so whimsical with it, Lloyd? Hey, we won, even though I let your man be taken by the void. He's gone. He's gone. By the way, he's gone. But hey, we did it. Two fingers. But I guess my whole thing is, and that's the problem that I have with this is, if okay, so say it's radiation, why not go to a timeline that has tons of it? Why go to a place? Why trap yourself in a place that originally you did specifically to get away from the void, which was well, it was ineffective, obviously. So there was that mistake. Clearly, I mean, it has to be a mistake, right? Yeah, and then perfect example, like Spoopy there, where he says after the murmur is expelled. Well, no, it wasn't, because whenever you went back in time, it's still there. You still have to fight the same thing, you know. When you die. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Well, I think that's part of the power of the void. I wonder if okay, so hear me out on this one. You know how certain entities can enact power by using magical words or runes, and there are other entities who can natively do it without the need for understanding or knowing them, but yet in the same breath might it's still the same understand it's still the same process, right? Kind of like if you create life, if like you were um if I show up at TennoCon, right? And I create a human being right in front of you. Like that human being that I create will still be, it'll have a heart and it'll have lungs and blood going through it and everything else. And it'll still have DNA of a regular. It's just I will have used the blueprint of the universe to create, right? And I think that's in the same, does that make sense? I just Aster, it just seems like Intrati misses a whole shit ton. And he's clumsy. Like there's very little care in what he does. It's a major issue with how I feel he conducts his business. if the murmur was expelled, wouldn't it, when we came back through the second time, wouldn't it not be there? Again, I don't know. I feel like the runes are older than Albrecht. I feel like Albrecht was only able to transcribe them versus like him creating them. Kind of in the same way I would look at, this is just my interpretation, but I very much feel there's a parallel between how the Carol runes are in Bloodborne, how Carol was able to interpret the language of the Great Ones and inscribe it into runes, and I really do think that that's how the runes are that Albrecht has. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, I want to get into my thing, but that'll be presented later this week. I don't want to get too much because I need all you guys to come and watch it. You know, but it's gonna be a fun one. It will. This is gonna be one of the more interesting ones because there's just so much evidence. That's the problem. We've gotten to a point now where there's a lot of evidence. But yeah, yeah, that's where things are headed. I think at least. But we're gonna, again, we'll kind of figure things out as we go. Um, I really do think that we're in a place that the story's kind of moving into. Have we already enemies at this point in the game for this account? I haven't really for this part account so far. I haven't really encountered anything that's like insane. So, give me 1 second. I apologize. My girl just came in. I think. Okay, I'm back, sir. So, I'm reading in the comments here in regards to this Highland Hipster, where you're saying about this update. Yes, it's definitely, we have a definite path forward now of like where
Navigation has
the
been
narrative's moving, and we're in it, and we're doing wonderful things. You know. Ooh, void time. Yes. I mean, that's true. I don't think we're ever going to get a quest that doesn't add more questions, you know, but the best we can ask for is a quest that answers more than it provides. I was there, Remus. We were talking about this a little earlier. That I have no clue where we might be headed to at TennoCon.
This tower is full of life forms, all corrupted by the neural sentry. Clean them out.
Uh oh. Hearing some hex action going on. They exist in this world now. Doop de doop doo. New character. Gotta get all the Iatans you can get.
The tower's neural sentry has turned these soldiers into mindless attack drones. You need to take them out.
Oh, I will tell you, this is some of. We don't just have some of the best storytelling in Warframe right now. Like, I'm actively looking around at other games, especially in the live service department. I mean, I feel like we're doing the best as Warframe players, story-wise. And, like, you got a game like Monster Hunter World that's coming out, right? And even though that game's going to be so much fun to play, and I can't wait, and I'm so excited. Don't worry, the story won't be good. The story in Monster Hunter World and Rise really was. I mean, it was the story. That's what you got. So I'm not expecting anything on that front from that game. But that's not really why I'm playing that game, you know? Ooh, hey. Give me that I-10. Oh, yes. That's what we were looking for, precious. Like, there's so many weapons that need those what do you call it? The argon crystals. Like, you don't even know. It's like seeing that just brings a smile to my face. There was a protagonist. I mean, I suppose, I don't know. Maybe it's better that there isn't a story to it, because the game itself doesn't make any sense. Like, you got these normal human beings wielding these just incredibly oversized weapons. I mean, we're talking these weapons, they weigh way more. In some instances, like, way more than the people themselves, and they're flinging them around like it's nothing. That's impressive. The thing that seemed to, I don't know if they changed anything or what the deal was, but um, that one that the enemy that lifts you up in the air. Oh my God, is that annoying? Oh, Final Fantasy VII had an amazing story. Oh my God, it's Argon Crystal City. Just get your crystalitos. Boom. Anything good in here? Ooh, this is a good one. Sorry, this is one of them places, you know. Thank you. That helps out a lot. No. Come on, another Argon Crystal. Give me it. Probably should have done that right off the bat, huh? Okay. Oh, yes. Got the fourth. That's 2 weapons, I think. That was a good trip to the void right there. Let me tell you. Oh, really? That's it. So was that like a bug or something? What was that? Does somebody explain to me what happened last week? I mean, we have proof of it. Yeah, but this wasn't Mania. This was Hey Kaizen, how are you? Good to see you. Oh wait, I got 4 Northern crystals. Ooh. Oh yeah, let's do some void action. Does anybody know what that was? Because we were in a survival in the void. Right? Yeah, it's actually my girl's account. But she has neglected it, so I figured I could utilize it for the purposes of going through and playing this lovely game just once again, one more time, if you will. Reinforce what I understand about the lore. You know, it's educational.
Target located. Bring them in.
Maybe pick up a few gold mods. That would be fantastical.
We cannot let our target know we're here. Track them down quickly. Success. The captive is safely in our hands.
Beautiful.
Congratulations, Tenno.
I mean, I do think at some point we got to get... I don't understand why the Drifter can't use... I mean, aside from just DE not putting it in the game yet, like... Why do they have a problem wielding guns if they can hold a sword? And then, like, why...
Stay focused. There's a
Oh,
heavy
wow.
unit approaching.
Got to see all the things there. Anything good and tasty in here? out across the street? Anything? Oh, that's... There's a whole section of it.
Mission complete. Excellent work, Tenno.
I do not have Lavos Prime yet, so I didn't get a chance to try him out. Lavos wasn't a frame that I was using very frequently to begin with. Only because I didn't take the time to actually learn how to use that frame correctly. That's something. Oh, yeah. Let's do defense. Do I even have any Axie Fishers? Oh, I'm gonna get destroyed there. No, that's not. That's probably not a good idea. I mean, it all depends on the way you look at things. Like, I look at the drifter and the operator as kind of like gods. I feel like them creating things out of the air, you know. Is this person in our group? No. I don't want to.
Operator, did you hear that? It said cosmic background radiation.
I don't know
for
what this
riot.
person is doing. I don't want to just start the mission. I don't like, because that person could be going through a loadout or trying to change some stuff up. Yeah, that's probably what was going on. But I do, you know, I just don't. I feel like if they can, you know, you got the operator with the amp, so I guess that's one thing. But you know, the drifter kind of uses a handgun.
Our position has been compromised.
Yeah, so it all depends on when the gods are gonna figure that portion of it out too. It won't be too long. I highly doubt it'll be too long. It'll just be like when DE gets a chance to do it. What car do I drive? I drive a Jeep. Jeep Wrangler. I like its tankiness. To me, that's the best vehicle. They do everything. They're like the Swiss Army vehicle. They can be a convertible. They can go in the snow because they got the four-wheel drive. They can, I mean, they can even go further than a convertible because you can take the doors off of them. So that's cool. They go like a whole other way. Heck, you can even, if you really wanted to, if you want to get crazy, you can actually take the windshield, the front windshield, and put it down. So you got that. And here's a story. So I was driving home from college, and I went to Penn State, right? And so the road that I was on was like in very rural area, like 2-lane highway type thing, and I was going about 65 miles per hour down the road. And this is, this was a different Jeep, obviously, but I had a Jeep back then. And this buck comes out, just literally runs right out in front of the road. And I hit it straight on, at least 65 miles per hour. It goes flying forward. Obviously, there's a jolt on my car, but you know, because it was just I couldn't see it. Like it was dark, it was nighttime. It was, you know, it just popped out. And the craziest part was I looked around for it and I couldn't find it. I'm sure that the body was somewhere, but it's very possible that I just like grazed it real hard and it, I don't know, broke something. Who knows? I couldn't find it. But I went and looked on the front bumper of the Jeep, you know, because I'm expecting, oh man, this thing, it's going to be so messed up. There was some hair from the deer, from the buck. But that was about it. It didn't, there was no dent. There was no scratch. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe this thing survived without any type of issue. The Jeep Rhino. That's a really good question. How can Drifter create loops? I mean, it kind of makes sense in Duviri because Duviri is a created world, right? But like it makes you question how you can do it in reality. Of course, I mean, there is a way that totally makes it work out just fine. Yeah, the one you definitely don't. You have to watch with the Jeeps because there's some seriously dangerous things you can do with them. You pull you try to take a turn at super high speeds. There's a real good chance, even in the newer ones, you're gonna end up on the side. Zerg, actually, I did get that. I was like, who's this guy? And then he came to my house, right? And he said, you know, as he was attacking me, and I stopped him for a second, and he's like, I was like, who are you? And he's like,
Extraction is ready.
didn't you get my email? And I was like, I skimmed it.
We're done here. The extraction team will take over from here. Time to evacuate.
Oh, absolutely. But it's one of those. A Jeep is one of those cars that is incredibly efficient and not gas efficient, but like efficient at doing a bunch of different things for you, like to have an all-in-one, like I said, Swiss Army kind of vehicle. But at the cost of, I mean, you're not taking that thing 100 miles an hour. You're just not going to, even in the good, if you have like the best engine, you can go 100 miles an hour. But if you turn funny, like it's not going to do well for you in that regard. So it comes with the cost, but that's like everything else. Plus, then there's also the other thing of like, it's a convertible, but you got to like do some stuff yourself to make it a convertible. It's not like you just push a button. Yeah, I did go back and steal, save the deers, baby. And I'm going to reiterate, I want to visit. I want visiting. I want to go visit the child. When do I get to visit young Sirius?
Operator, Ordis has been interfacing with the Foundry's AI precepts. You could say we forged a new connection.
Like I said, the craziest thing about the whole incident was how much impact I hit this poor thing with, and how little damage there was because of it, like to the point of like nothing really. I said, aside from me having to like clean, like there was definitely hair, which I felt terrible. I even looked around for it. It was so dark out though. It was like one of these back road, like there's these long stretches in PA of like which you would essentially consider like a major highway, if you will, but it's literally like 2 lanes, dark, farmland type situations, and I mean can't see anything. So that's actually one of the things. So yeah, do very I. There is a point as the drifter in 1999 in the KIM messages, right, goes on to talk about Duviri and how it was a personal punishment, the idea of putting himself through this over and over and over again. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the concept of the other, the drifter potentially creating something similar to the man in the wall, similar to the Entradi man in the wall, but not the same, and not maybe even of its own accord, because Thrax really doesn't. He doesn't make any sense. Everybody the in Duviri mistakes the drifter for you or for Thrax, and vice versa. You know, they call him sire as he's walking by. Yet the 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 soldiers still attack. Then you have the idea of this being that does have a human aspect to him because he has like fleshy legs, at least, if nothing else. But it's obviously missing an arm. And I think one of the things that keeps making me believe that Thrax is a void like copy of the drifter, but is different in that that copy in that world, I feel, acts like a child. And I think even more so than, like, it's just kind of stated at the very end of Duviri, where it's like, you know, you kind of see Thrax very possessive about the doll and whatnot. But there's also other instances where you see an innate fear of this aspect of the void that it doesn't understand. And to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that Thrax isn't a part of the void. I mean, everything in Duviri is part of the void. So going back to my whole thing with everything's a part of the void that has influence, the reason why I think there is a difference is because I think that because we know that the drifter didn't get a deal, right? But we don't know, and there's no definitive language that says that the man on the wall ever came to the drifter. All the drifter says in the new war is, you're the you that got saved, and I'm the you that had to stay in all this. So that doesn't mean that that the man on the wall came to the drifter and the drifter said, "No, I'm not taking this deal." It just means that the man on the wall didn't save the drifter, which could again mean that it never showed up to the drifter, which would actually kind of make sense because everything that was happening on the Zeraman as the void jump was initially occurring scared the drifter to the point where he, as a child would, kind of encapsulated Can you hear me? Can you see me now? I apologize. Did we make it back or not? Actually, it wasn't lagging. That was on my end. My OBS disconnected for some reason, just for a little bit. I apologize. I don't really know what's going on with that. Can everybody hear me? Let's say, so getting back to the point that I was immediately getting into there, I really do think that the personification of Thrax mirrors the personification of the Tenno child at the moment that we see with his hands kind of over his head, scared and stuff like that at the very end of Duviri. I think that mimics or parallels how Entradi got into the void in the same way. It wasn't like there was a deal involved because remember, Entradi didn't have a deal in the beginning. Now, I believe he made a deal after the fact. And that's why he needed the vessel and the summoning circles in order to commune with the indifference. But I feel like if you look at those two things and how they parallel each other, that Entradi's other that was not born of a deal, that like mimics his mentality and personification, and then you have Thrax that was built not of a deal, that mimics the Drifter's persona as a child whenever he would have first created this entity. And especially given the fact that the Drift, or I should say Dominus Thrax, is still in a child form, that would suggest that Thrax was formed whenever the Drifter was still a child, right? So I can also see that, and here's the interesting part. Now check this out, and it might kind of go hand in hand with the new lyrics that we got in the Whispers in the Wall soundtrack, and how there's this master character, right? I don't think that every entity is necessarily on board with the quote-unquote master. I think because of how Thrax was created, he actually fears, maybe for no reason, maybe for a reason that he doesn't understand even, but you can see that when things come into Duviri, especially void, quote-unquote void-related things, he's actually fearful of it, right? And that could be a product of not understanding his place because he was created, just of the void, not understanding yet his place within the hierarchy of the void itself and the entities and the master. And then after being created, being instructed by Entradi, because as we see in the notes, Entradi instructed Thrax on the indifference and what it was and blah, blah, blah. It's very possible that in its innocent state that it didn't even understand what the hell it was. Much like the Tenno didn't understand what the hell they were until after the second dream. At least once the collapse happened. So, in that regard, this is where I kind of get into the concept of that 1999, because it functions so much like Duviri, it's hard for me to get behind the idea of a consistently looping timeline that one of the participants can leave and not see any repercussions in the original, in the rest of the timeline. Because, that's one of the paradoxical problems about time travel is that you would, in fact, unequivocally have a ripple effect if you went back in time in the tiniest things. Because the introduction of even the smallest aspect of a new function of time that could, in fact, exert a will on anything else would, by its very nature, create paradoxes. So when you think of it in that regard and in that kind of mindset, 1999 happening one time and then happening a second time, if you will, right? And us making the timeline right. I think I can get behind that. Because there is the whole concept of kind of repairing the time or the prime timeline. In the prime timeline, I think I do believe exists in Warframe, where there's this major timeline, and then there's these other things that they're void creations and conceptually embodied timelines, as Lloyd specifically talks about and describes during Whispers in the Walls in regards to the strands of Kra. Conceptually embodied timelines is what he calls them. So if you have this prime timeline, is it more possible that, or I should say, is it more probable that 1999 is a conceptually embodied timeline
available. Check navigation.
that is outside of the prime timeline, and thus changes to it do not affect the prime? Or are we saying that this pocket of our actual timeline can continue to restart and restart and restart with us doing different things in each iteration? Because you didn't play, when you played this timeline, you didn't play it exactly the same. You didn't use all the same frames that you used in the last month of stuff to get through the year. You didn't use the exact same weapons for every single mission. You didn't use the exact same companions. You didn't kill the same things. You didn't kill the same amount. You didn't crash the same amount of containers in this month that you did last month. You didn't kill the exact same people. You didn't leave certain people alive that you left alive the last time around. So what I'm trying to get at is the idea that we're portraying at the moment, if we want to get behind this with 1999 being a timeline, is that 1999 stops and continues to start up, but the rest of the timeline is continuing forward. Not only that, this constantly reoccurring 1999 that keeps spinning around and around and around and around and around has no bearing on anything else. I mean, I get that the Drifter is portrayed in that way, but it doesn't mean that it's right. Look, there is a reason. There is a reason why there is a statement that goes something like this: the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. See, we don't know what we're doing as Tenno. We don't know what's going on. And I would say, given on, if you followed my content now for the past, since leading up to the Hex Quest and afterwards, I would say we have done everything wrong. And I think if you look at, if you actually start looking into some of the dialogue of the Hex, that sentiment is starting to pop its way through. I think PG was, I think, the original person who showed me this, but then I got the dialogue myself. Letty is not necessarily happy with the Drifter because there's this underlying idea that she's fighting with, in that the Drifter didn't really save her because they still have to go and die again. And then they're going to come back. And then they're going to die again. And then they're going to come back. And then they're going to die again. And then they're going to come back. And the worst part is that they know it's going to happen. Whereas and her point was that everybody else in the mall and all these people in Hulvania and everything, like, as she's patching them up and helping them out, blah, 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 she can just let them all die because who cares? They're just going to come back. What's the point? What is the... And she is upset with the Drifter in the fact that you have taken away the ability for the Hex to die. They have to live in this loop until you can figure something else out. And the worst part is that I think you're seeing this in other sentiments with the Hex in a very subtle way, in that they're starting to wonder about the Drifter and their life, because their life is not tied to 1999 in this time loop. They can just leave. They can just go. They can go and they can do whatever they want and they can move into another timeline. But the Hex, they're just left there. PG, here's the problem that I see. And it was something that I wanted to express in my last video on the alignment, but I don't think I did it well enough. Maybe I can expound on this thought a little bit better here. Being a centrist, or being somebody who's in the middle, in the idea of the Warframes, universe, a balanced between light and dark, because that's a lot of, I think there's a lot of illusion of that's kind of what Teshin was trying to portray to us when he talks about the alignment system, that that not through one way alone is mastery possible. But I think that this idea of a centrist mindset is not one that says every decision that I'm going to make is going to be down the middle, okay? That's not what it means. What it really means is being able to make the hard choice on either extreme, even if it's necessary, but being able to examine all of the options and weigh them for their individual individual effectiveness, usefulness. So in some iterations, it's more to go above and beyond to save others, but you do that because that's what you feel, and that's, instead of it being a center opinion, it's more extreme to one side. But when you're making that choice on the one side to save people, even when it's not necessarily the most logical choice, there's always going to be the flip side of that, where Well, whatever. I mean, again, it's middle. Um, Centrist is still in the middle, political or not. Balanced is fine. The way I see it is it's that center section that isn't a place that you. I mean, it's probably hardly ever where you're going to make decisions, because decisions are about things, especially in life, are rarely ever black and white. You know, there's always a gray level to every single one. So, is as this balance, kind of moves forward. It may require, in order to stay in balance for whatever the Tenno considers the greater good, to potentially have to engage in things, and they already have, that are more extreme in nature. And one of them, I think that you could make the case for, um, is that in this iteration, in this situation, you could make a case that the Tenno chose wrong. That if there is truth to what, if let's say that we take the quest at face value, right? And we say that Albert and Trotty needs this rare spark he came back here for, needs it, and that's how we're going to be able to get things on track against the indifference. And we had to, in order to do it, like, we have to blow up the thing and whole 9 yards. And in like hindsight now, with members of the Hex starting to question the world outside of 1999, and if they actually want to be involved in this Groundhog Day type of experiment thing forever and ever, because in the grand scheme of things, there's no guarantee that the Tenno are going to fix it. I mean, right now we're 2 months in. We're more than 2 months in, and the calendar continues to move forward until a particular day, and then reverts back. So you'd like, in theory, to believe that there is going to be a resolution to this potentially within the course of the year, and if that is the case, then so be it. This is all a moot point. But say that doesn't happen, and say the Hex are forced into a situation where they have to live this over and over and over and over and over again. And here's one of the interesting things that people don't, if you don't know the book behind Groundhog Day, right? You don't know that in the book version, that the character goes through that day for like hundreds of years. That's the reason why, in the movie of Groundhog Day, like, he can, starts learning the piano. He learns it one day, and then the next day, oh look, I can play it the thing, the little event. But in actuality, it took him years to learn the piano, to play it that well. But that's all we had was time on his hands. But then you have to ask, is that exactly what the people that we saved, that's what they want? And the Drifter's answer is in character, and I think it's what any of us would do. And I think it is a good rebuttal to what Eleanor asks, or I mean, not Eleanor, when Letty kind of confronts us about this, and he says, look, you mean something to me. You all care about me. What was I supposed to do? Like, I see you patching people up every day here, Letty. Like, what? To expect me to not want to save you is to essentially call yourself a hypocrite. Like, I just want to do the same thing that you were doing. And in that regard, you can't blame the Drifter for what was done, but at the same time, it doesn't completely justify the action. Well, maybe the whole murmur thing was meant to throw people off. I mean, somebody who was speaking to us does, kind of have control of that whole faction. Well, I mean, Francisca, we're learning all kinds of new things. Like, I got to be honest with you, I was very taken aback by what I learned about the indifference in both the quest, the hex quest, but then also in the messages when Eleanor kind of speaks about what she experiences when she is probing Rusalka's mind. It puts a completely different spin on at least what I thought that the void was capable of. Like there's all new stuffs, and it has way more capability than I think any of us thought. Right? Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. I mean, like I said, this is this is easy. It's the editing. It's the editing that keeps me from putting out more videos more frequently. But if I could do one of these as like a podcast, do the stream, do the member stream, and a video weekly, that's actually not that's not a small amount of content from the channel. I wouldn't think, right? I think somebody controls the murmur. Yeah, one person in particular. I mean, I would actually surmise that some of the entities that are being portrayed in the lyrics of the Whispers in the Wall soundtrack, the songs on there, are some of the murmur speaking, whispering about the coming of the master. Yeah, there you go. There's nothing. Theseus ship. That's a really good one. So, yeah, that's what I think. I mean, if it's satisfactory, I can just basically play for 3 hours. Put that on behind it and just talk. Yeah, I mean, I'll go through and that's one of the nice things I do enjoy the most about um, the videos, though, is I really get to like kind of put. I like. I don't like just telling you what I'm thinking. I like showing you the parts in the game. That way, you know that I've done the research, right? There you go. Well, that's perfect. Well, in Kume, we think it's the infested singing, right? But in Kume, that is uh, it's portrayed as a future experience, right? And we've kind of already talked about a void connection that is going to be occurring with this with the infested, if you will, or the tech rot that's already come. But more so than that, if you look at the lyrics of Kome's song, the theme song, uh, to me, it doesn't seem like Kome is telling the people of Cetus. It doesn't seem like she's trying to warn them in regards of you can stop this. It seems like she's trying to warn them in that you better get out of there because you're not going to win. And I also think there is a level of kind of that same ice skating uphill mentality that we have with Duviri and now with 1999 that was kind of like a tiny little injection of that same concept in the whole Kome thing. Because essentially, we are brought to, in the idea of Kome, Sai's visions, we are brought to this moment. Kome is bringing us to this situation where we can supposedly change time, right? Change the frame, make it, bring a different future for the people of Cetus. Yet we just keep going back in over and over and over and over and over and over, and nothing changes. And the lyrics actually say that. Okay, so here's the thing, Nicholas. I actually think I'm not sure about this, and here's why. It is true that Kome's shrine is a new addition. However, I went back into my old messages from way back when Cetus first came out, and we do get a message from Saya talking about Kome. This was years ago. This was way before Kome ever came out. So I don't know if Kome was something that DE always had planned to release and just never got around to it, or if they had written it in the story way back then, but like this was in the storyboards as, hey, this comes out right before 1999 because it's kind of it's a little introductory into the idea of redoing a thing over and over and almost like fighting against fate, because that's exactly what the concept of Kome and the Five Fates is. I mean, so it's interesting because as far as we know, it could be the infested that's already within the area surrounding the tower, right? Not the Unum. But something obviously will happen to the Unum in the process. But what I'm thinking is, and this is kind of interesting, this is like a future type of situation, right? This is a vision that we're supposed to have in the future. I was wondering if, due to the very close nature of where Cetus is in regards to Hulvania, if there isn't some kind of connection that's going to manifest into, now again, this is my interpretation, but I just feel like the idea of the prime timeline works best for me because things are changing in our timeline. And I can give you a couple instances of it. The first one is the introduction of Party of Your Lifetime at the Necrolisk. Even if you buy into the idea that Party of Your Lifetime happened in 1999 and that song has just been around forever, it's just too much of a coincidence that Kylie would start listening to it now when it has so much lore implications, and especially within the ARG, when we learn about the concept of this form of the infested being able to infect through data transfer. You can see where this is starting to move in the way of that was not a thing and now it is a thing. Secondly, we have added dialogue in the Once Awake quest now, whereas before they did not make an iteration or an allusion to the infestation being something that predated the Oricon. Now within that quest, you do. See, I think just because of the language itself, PG, that is Kome, because it feels like they're talking it's almost like Kome is speaking to the people. That's how I interpreted Kome's theme, is that Kome is basically saying to them, it is in fact, or she is in fact, providing them the warning that she claims. But I don't think that she's giving them the opportunity to change it as they believe. Well, then there's that too, Hawks. That basically we're about to see that things that happened in the past with the coda just seem to imprint upon our timeline at various things. So, again, it might be completely wrong. I'm just trying to put everything together in a method that kind of allows for a visualization of the Warframe timeline, right? And the only way that I can see that functioning is with like a singular line that kind of goes through that can be imprinted upon based upon elements of these conceptually embodied void timelines that seem to interact and intersperse within the prime, changing things. So Kome and the Five Fates, as we get to Cetus, we are implored by Saya to help her with these visions that she's having. Okay? And the visions portend of a future for Cetus that is essentially completely overrun by the infestation. But she is also a believer in some level of the arcane, in that Kome has some level of omniscience or some kind of power that she can bring entities to within the these dreams or these visions, right? And essentially, well, maybe change the outcome based upon the actions of the entity that has been invited into this world. Now, again, if some of this is sounding a lot like, like void portals and stuff like that, given that Warframes have the abilities to do that sort of thing, like, we could very, very well be seeing a similar situation to something like, how Parvos Granum is able to create a pocket of the void by using, Proteus powers and things of that nature. There's all sorts of different things, but when you have this void conceptually embodied aspect circling around the prime timeline at all times, pockets of void that can act in, let's say, impossible by conventional physics type of methods, right, becomes reality, becomes not just a thing that is an interesting thought, but almost like, well, why wouldn't it do that, given what we've already seen that it's capable of? So, yeah, I mean, maybe Kume's ability, but it's interesting because Kume's abilities are predicated upon another force. Okay? This is the thing. So there's a song that plays in the background when you do her stuff, and it's essentially, if you go through and transcribe the lyrics, it's her mapping out this future of an infested timeline. But over and over, she keeps telling us, you may have missed a quest. It's at Cetus. It's called Si's Visions. But to me, it acts, her little void pocket or dream pocket or whatever it is, acts in a very similar manner to that of Duviri or 1999, and in this uh, timeline, in that you're doing the same thing. You're repeating Sai's vision again and 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 again, and you beat the thing at the end, which looks, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it the same creature that we fight at the? Isn't it? It's essentially like a very similar creature, only more highly infested to the tech rot creature that we fight at the reactor. It's just it. If you told me that those things eventually evolve into each other, I would tell you, okay, that sounds. They actually look like that's where it could be going towards. So you beat this thing in a very similar manner, and then you just start over again. So what did you accomplish? Did we get? Wouldn't you think that you'd do it like one time and right? Hawks, could you see the tech rot version evolving into that though? Because again, the tech rot and the infestation look visually different, right? When you can see in 1999, there are still aspects of the
Tenno,
whatever
a new
the
alert
thing
has
was
begun.
that was
It will be marked on
integrated,
navigation.
be it a um, television or cabling or do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not, and again, this is still speculation. I just think they look very similar in their mentality and the way that they function, the way that they attack. Um, that I think that you could make the case that in the one's a 1999 variation, one moves. But again, speculation. But what you can't speculate on is it's the same thing happening, right? Yeah, it is. It's the same thing. But that's what I'm saying is that that thing that's on Deimos could be the evolution of the Babao. Like that could be where it heads, or maybe it's some iteration off of it. Because we're looking at, I mean, everything tech rot related looks different from our infestation now. There's no two things that share a completely similar look. Do you know what I'm saying? Even though we're pretty certain they are kind of the same thing, just with different variations. See, I look at it like as the infested is the continual evolution. Like maybe my interpretation's off here, but I look at the tech rod as like it initially connecting things together, but after over time, right? After consuming other things and other things and other things and other things and other things, eventually that TV wouldn't look like a TV anymore because it would have been overcome with all kinds of other stuff, growths and this, that, and the other thing. So there could be like TVs inside it still, maybe that haven't been completely assimilated. But I look at the infestation as the later like kind of evolution of it, in that it's consumed so much at this point that there's really no, it doesn't have any loose affiliation with any singular organic or inorganic thing, be it a television or a chair or a human or whatever. I don't know. It didn't. No, it didn't. It didn't lose the ability to assimilate it. It's just it's assimilating everything. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so it started out because it can assimilate both organic and inorganic. So sure, in the beginning it looks like a TV, and then it's connected with some more infested stuff with some cables and some other things that are, uh, sweeper and maybe some guns and crap. But over time, right? as more things would assimilate, it would start to lose its definitive looks on one particular thing, right? And in fact, it would probably start to evolve into like more of a blob, which is what it really looks like if you think about it. Well, I mean, obviously the tech rot can assimilate technology too because it's made of electrical things, right? Well, that's the other thing, Phyllis. That's kind of goes back to my prime timeline thing. If 1999 isn't the original 1999, but is now imprinting itself upon us as the new 1999, well, then all kinds of things could change. You know, it's crazy. It goes back to the whole butterfly effect, in that if you so I'm not saying that okay, so I see where I lost you here. I'm not saying that the tech rot that may have been associated or may have existed in 1999 or at any other time before that didn't look like the tech rot that we see in 1999. I'm saying that the 1999 that we go to, that specific one, I have a hard time believing that it is us moving back in time, more so us going to a conceptually embodied version of 1999. Whereas our 1999 still happened. Does that make sense? Meaning that the tech rod probably would have still looked like that. I don't think the tech rod looking like it does is a product of us going back to 1999. I think it that was how it was. I just think that its evolution kind of moving forward would have made it look different as the years and the centuries went on. I mean, really, what we know about the Deimos thing is that it's just it's a product of a cascade bomb of an infestation. It's that way because the sentients were coming and the Orkin were losing, and they didn't want to lose the um all the technology and whatnot that existed on Deimos, obviously. And so instead of them trying to defend it because they couldn't do it, they decided to just overrun it with the infestation, which happened. They bombed it. Um, why would I assume that the real 1999 is the real 19? Isn't? I think I think that might go back to the inclusion of Dark Sector. In the Dark Sector seems to allude to the idea that the infested was created sometime in the mid 1900s, I guess. So the idea that it would be like, I guess it would be in the 60s or 70s. Is that when Dark Sector is? Or is it the 90s? I can't remember exactly when that's. Just because the technology in the game, I don't think the way it looks, like with reel to reels and stuff like that, doesn't really match up exactly with the year. But I think that could be the key. I mean, I really do think that. I don't think that Dark Sector is the exact like beginning of Warframe, but I think the infested in that, which is called the same thing, the Technosite, may have just started up around the same time. Hmm. I think Rel could have accepted or could have escaped, or I think Wally could have escaped Rel by breaking him down with his own mother's voice. Well, except how it's an interesting thought because in reality, maybe not the mother, but that is essentially how he does break through by appearing to break down as Rel, right? And the only reason why I say that is because there's this epiphany point at the end of. Now, I'm not saying no. I'm saying I'm not saying that Dark Sector is canon, but I am saying that there's some allusion to it of aspects of Dark Sector's concept being the beginnings of Warframe's concept as well. And the fact that now they're both in the same game together may even add some kind of additional credibility. Also, it just seemed really weird to me that DE offered the game for free in the lead up to 1999. The hex, like why? It's like why? So you're telling people go play this game? Why? It'd be one thing to get the rights and to sell it for cheap, like on sale, upfront. Hey, $10, $15, you can get Dark Sector, $5, whatever. But to just give it away, I don't know. I don't know. But there was something else I was going to say here. Oh, so there's this little part of Chains of Harrow at the very end, and I don't know how like long standing it actually like what its implications truly are. It's when we're sitting there at the end and we walk in to Rel's chamber with Harrow. And Palladino, for the first time, acknowledges that the voice that she was hearing, that was what quote unquote Rel's, is not Rel. She specifically says, Tenno, that's not Rel. So the question that you have to then ask yourself is, okay, but it speaks in Rel's voice. How long has it not been Rel? Was it just not Rel right this second? Was it not Rel when we meet for the first time, where Rel's attacking us with his chains and everything else like that, and all the other things are attacking us? Or was it even before that? And the reason why it ever escapes in the first place, because it is strange that the Tenno would get this call out of the clear blue from the Red Veil, who, for many of us at that point, would have had no affiliation with, or heck, we may not even have spoken to the Red Veil. In fact, some of us may have even been opposed, deeply opposed to Red Veil, and yet they come asking our help on something very specific. They send out this transmission to us. And if Wally was looking for his way in, which clearly the Chains of Harrow, whether it be the intentional, let's say, or not, clearly it was necessary for the chains to break, because the chains don't just break in our world, do they? They break somewhere else. So there is the question. When did Palladino meet Rel? If the voice was Rel from the very beginning, right? Why would it do any of this? It understand it. There's maybe no entity that understands the man in the wall better than Rel. Yet Rel is the one that has us, or has Palladino contact us. And now understand, I am not saying that Rel gets overtaken by the indifference. Like that's actually not what I'm saying. I'm actually saying that when Rel gave himself to his warframe in order to lock the entity up, it locked all somehow. And again, in the web comic with Rel, his exact thing is he wants to, his idea is he's going to figure this guy out. That's what he says. There's somebody I need to figure out. And we also know from the Chains of Hero quest, because I imagine what we were listening to were memories, right? That Rel is very intelligent, exceptionally intelligent. So having him figure out a way to keep the indifference at bay, perhaps even with the help of a particular somebody who offered him a warframe in order to do exactly what was necessary. But here's the interesting part that I always found about this. If this were the first time that we met the indifference, then I would be more on board with the concept that it was Rel from the beginning, and only at the very end was somehow a switch was made, and it wasn't Rel anymore, right? But when I think about what also occurred during, or what happened in Duviri with this entity named Garmy, who has a lot of Rel-like traits, if you will, I can't help but think that everything was fine until we came out of our, whatever Margulis did to the Tenno that Teshin was able to release. That was the problem, because that is actually the first time we meet the indifference. And I think that's the moment where it has the ability to contact us, and wouldn't you know it, it already has a vessel allowing it to get its message to us through the waves, if you will, and help us free itself. I never even thought of that, Ilham. Because it never really did make sense, that line. You used to hate me. What do you mean? I don't even know who the hell you are. You know? Yeah, why are you helping me? Again, now bear in mind, everybody, you got to be, in order for this to all kind of work out, you have to be looking at it from the perspective of kind of like what I was told you before, that like the world is kind of void infused. So the man in the wall can do all kinds of crazy stuff because the void is so intertwined with everything, right? You know, it says that, well, Rel was outcast by all the Tenno, but if you look at the webcomic, he was actually only outcast by one. And you know what else is interesting about the one that he was outcast by? His eyes. If you've never seen the webcomic, you should really check it out. But of course, I just think that Rel essentially did what he said he did. He contained the indifference. He was a Tenno that experienced the indifference just like us. But I think, now, hold me to this. I think due to his autistic nature and his inability to understand emotions in the same way, he was not something that the indifference was attracted to. Not saying that it didn't give him his power, it just didn't have the same effect with Rel that it did with the other Tenno, because of his more essentially stoic nature because of that, right? So with that in mind, that's how Rel was able to do the things that Rel was able to do. That being said, I think we may have undid what Rel did in Chains of Harrow based upon faulty advice that Palladino was given from the Void under the guise of them helping Rel. I actually think it might be the other way. It's that you know, because of the condition, the interpretation of emotionality is different, and thus may not have been something that Wally or the indifference could have contended with at the moment, given its because remember, we also have to look at the indifference as its own kind of evolving being, and I think even Tagfer and a couple other entities make allusions to that. That it's kind of figuring its way out around too about what it can do and how it can function within the origin system and its capabilities. I mean, Highlander, we're still trying to figure out the second dream. You know you know what I'm saying? Here's the question: what quests do we know definitively? Which one of those are there? I don't know if there are any. Well, then Needy James Baldwin is right, because that's what I said in a stream, I believe yesterday, is that what makes this story so fucking good. Sorry for the swear word, right? But what makes it so good is that the same people have been able to expound upon the core ideas that made the game in the beginning. You don't have different people trying to interpret what other people were thinking 2 years before when they were writing this portion of the story. You want to know what they were thinking? Well, talk to them. They're right there. Right? Oh, yeah. Wave Rider. It's really great. So good. We'll definitely be getting to that one soon. That's right. That it deserved an F-bomb. Well, that's the whole thing with Once Awake. Once Awake is extremely confusing now, especially if you played it before, because there's new stuff, and you can look at it one of two ways. Because there's only two ways to look at it. Here, one way is DE retconned it. There's the one. I don't believe that though, because there is a perfectly good in-game explanation that follows the lore, that uses devices that are already baked into the game to explain this, right? Yeah, you might want to go get yourself some Jack and Diet Pepsi maybe or something. Yeah, it's never happening. I mean, sure it will. There you go. I can't wait for Johnny Silverhand to give us a gun. And then, I mean, sadly, you could say, if this was all a dream, I mean, you could say it because they could easily go back and they could say, like, we could get to the end of the Whispers in the Wall quest, right? And at the very end, they could show a scene where the Tenno is just now getting out of, like, even in a first person thing, is crawling out of the cryopod, and everything that we experienced over the last God knows however many years is all the quote unquote dream that Margulis put us in. Except all that's what we were kind of talking about. Like, there's all kinds of crazy things that are perfectly capable of happening. I wouldn't like it either. Okay, I don't want to wake up in the new world and have all this stuff be a dream. My only point is that if it happened, it's not like you couldn't say there wasn't tons of supporting evidence all throughout multiple quests to support it. That's all I'm saying. Like, if the DE decided to go that way, even if I hated it, it's not like I could say, "Oh, this doesn't make any sense." No, it makes perfect sense. Well, that's what I like even the best. See, like, to me, if they ever did that, given that Warframe is in third person, right? If they ever did that, I think it would be cooler that if you got out, check this out. If you got out of it, that one, everything in that world was in first person. So it was like you who are playing are now in the game, and you can go into the game and then go into third person, and you're playing the game, and then you can go into your Warframe. So you're like Inception 3-4 levels deep type deal, right? And then imagine that, like, there was a level of Warframe that was all first person. And maybe even it's like more of a grounded thing where, like, your character, like, actually has to run around with guns and shit and grenades, and it's like a completely different game altogether. Like, you know? And again, oh, and Daniel, like, then that could all be a dream, and you could wake up in like an RPG, like an MMO somewhere, like you could wake up in Skyrim, you know, like you could just keep going and going and going. And that's another thing we could, because of the time nature of things, I think it was mentioned a couple times already that we may end up becoming the things that we fight against later. The whole Raziel situation. It all comes back to Skyrim. That one scene too. So, but yeah, right? That would be, I mean, again, there are multiple things that you could. Oh, maybe. Wouldn't that be something? And how we would have to figure out ways that everybody could contact us through the matrix, if you will. And like, here's the thing: with the number of different types of quote unquote games that DE keeps trying to put into their system, like, you know what I'm talking about, like different, like with the Viri was very different like from other things, and then I would say like 19, like the Hex Quest is, it's a lot more grounded, and like as I mentioned in an earlier video, like not necessarily Remnant, but you know, that kind of, I didn't feel quite as invincible in the beginning portions of the Hex Quest because I only had access to like that first frame, if you will, and like not like completely super upgraded weapons, and
New alert marked on navigation, Tenno.
so like, and you know, the fact that like Quincy almost showed up as a first person only frame, like the first person frame in Warframe. Like, wouldn't that be crazy if you could get outside of Warframe into a first person version in a whole other world, and you could do that, and holy shit, like it's like Warframe would become like the Walmart of gaming. Like, everything's right here. You know, what do you want? What game do you want? Do you want a fighting game? Do you want like a, we got Frame Fighter? Do you want third person space game? Oh yeah, we got that. Do you want arcade type game? Oh, we got those. Do you want Contra? We got that. Do you want a first person shooters experience? Yes, we have that. So first person would be like Destiny. Do you know what I'm saying? Like essentially, do you, do you know? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, you, like essentially the camera is here on the front of the face of the character, so it's like like you are the first person. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Although I'll be honest with you, I saw Vildar. I saw somebody did something in that regard. Oh, thanks, babe. In that regard, that like it made it look like first person Warframe, and it didn't look bad. It looked a little janky, but for the most part, it was pretty cool actually. Again, it if anything like this were to happen, a lot of the story points, you know, we're starting back at scratch again. We're starting at the beginning. That's a shame because I'd really like to see Warframe in first person. I think it would actually be really cool. See, Needy, I don't think that was Dr. E. I think that was the indifference. And I think it's further kind of supported by, you know, again, it's something that most people are not going to do. But if you listen to the very end of the Hex Quest, the second time through, whenever Trotty's talking to you, as Arthur's moving out of the reactor, It without the music on, it doesn't sound a lot like Andrade. I'll be curious to see. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to go to Tau. I just, to me, it just seemed like a very convenient thing because it was when every other, it's what every other Orkin has said that they wanted. So it's very generic, in my opinion. It's something, if the Indifference was trying to use or tried to personify an Orkin, that sounds like it would want, but what was something of what it would want. But in the same breath, the whole goal of what we are trying to do, as I understand it, right, is to save, because this is the whole reason why we're back in 1999 and everything else. The whole idea is to save the origin system and overcome the indifference, according to Entrati. So I don't understand if that was the reason that I was sent back here, and if Lloyd matters and everything else like that. Entrati saying, "Let's go to Tau" is essentially him saying, "Let's just give the indifference to, or let's just give the origin system the indifference and everything there. Let's bolt." And that does not fall in line with everything that we have been doing up to this point. So I don't understand why he would want to go to Tau when the whole idea was for him to try to counter the indifference. And, if he, in quote unquote, loves Lloyd, saving Lloyd and his family and all this other stuff that he supposedly has, kind of gotten feelings for. I don't think, I personally don't see, I'm not saying that we're not going to Tau. I think eventually that will be a thing. But I think that's going to, be something else that DE is going to move towards. Again, I could be wrong, but because I think there's a lot of story to be had there that doesn't necessarily have to be intertwined with the indifference. Like, what I'm saying is you have this story in front of you right now in regards to the Man on the Wall and Albert Entrati and the Tenno and how that all works together. You don't need to introduce more story elements in all the other entities that may in fact be out in Tau now. You're going to confuse people, and you're going to leave a lot of things kind of on the table that are like, okay, well, what happened with this? And what are we doing with this? And then what about that part? I mean, again, I don't see Tau being a place of anything for the indifference. I think it was a what's the word, dog whistle, kind of like something that it would say that it would think the Tenno would think that it would want as an Orkin. Again, this is just my take. But I don't think that last part, or when Entrati's talking about, especially at the end when he's talking about Tau, I don't think that's Entrati. I mean, I still have to question where all the injuries went. Not to mention, how did he get there? The indifference scooped him up. The only thing that you can say is that those two were in league. Or else the indifference just really sucks at holding Entrati. Because for some reason, even though the indifference has Entrati at multiple times in the quest, he just lets her go. He just lets him go. Even though getting Entrati was like the main thing of what the indifference wanted, right? So he could get him. Like, that was the whole thing. Even the Lotus said, you got to find him. You got to find Entrati before the Void does. Oh, okay. Well, we didn't. Didn't seem to matter much. That was my other thing. Entrati has never spoken about Tau. Aside from a little piece of information in the Codex down in the Sanctum, where it's discussing what Ballas was doing, That's it. I mean, I think Entradi's final goal is to rid himself of the indifference. I really do believe that. I think he's scared to death of it. I think he can't live his life, and I think that's. I personally believe that's why his take is so extreme on what he's willing to do to counter the indifference, because he's basically given up on. He can't live while the other survives. I'm talking in the general sense of Entradi. Well, I mean, again, Archon, that was my whole thing with I just don't really get a lot of the Hex quest and Warframe 19, or I mean in Whispers in the Walls. The story does not go in line with what we are supposed to be doing, or what's supposed to be happening according to what people know. Again, there's this big thing made in the very beginning of Whispers in the Walls where Entradi is essentially sealing himself off, and he even goes on to say in the little on the green screen during the thing, I had to do this. I had to trap myself here, because I couldn't have him going after Lloyd, right? So okay, so I'm in this place that that I'm safe, right? No, you're not. In fact, both times we've been back there, he was there. So I don't know what you're talking about on that one. And then he traps himself in a place that he essentially needs to blow up. Well, I mean, are you coming out first, or and how are you doing that? And then again, you have the indifference who only wants Entradi so he can get his finger back, according to like the prevailing wind, if you will. He just wants his finger back. Yet he has Entradi tied up and loses him. How? Why did you even transport him in a car when you can just flip him away and just fly, vanish and take everybody to the Zeraman? Well, why did you do that? Unless it was meant to have the operator see and have that happen, which is the reason why I think the whole Rizalka thing where she's like, who are you? Who are you? To kind of like play on the Tenno's emotions, like, oh, this isn't the indifference. This is just a lady. It's just a girl. And that's even one of the answers. But it's not really him, is it? Yeah, then we also have Entradi. So that was another thing. So if we're stuck in 1999, how does that version of Entradi, who was down there when we went back to Warframe 1999, right? Like in the first time Whispers the Wall, how is that version of Entradi, who's the man, show up at the Sanctum with our operator at the end of Whispers in the Walls? How did he get out? I mean, let's be real. The worst thing that could be, and they definitely could be setting this up, Albrecht and the Indifference could be working together. Now, there's a lot, that's a loaded situation because I made mention in my other videos that I thoroughly believe that Entradi, while he did not make a deal at the moment that the indifference was created, the indifference did want to make a deal because you can see the hand placement in the Requiem art. it was basically reaching his hand out, a lot like in the same thing that the Tenno did for the operator, or the man on the wall did for the operator, right? But there are multiple situations, multiple areas in the sanctum that have summoning circles. One in particular, there's a chair, and this is, I mean, this is exactly how demons are summoned in like the really real world, if you will, through circles, summoning circles with essentially with runes around. And it's funny that there is this one chair that the Indifference and our operator go and hang out on the end of Whispers in the Walls that is facing the vessel that looks like the man in the wall. If you look at the architecture, right, of the headpiece, if you will, coming up from the vessel that speaks to Lloyd at the end of 1999, and is also the one that's taken over by the Indifference during Whispers in the Walls. My thought is that is where Albrecht communed with the Indifference. That is where he would speak to it. And here's how, and it's no different than what we as the Tenno experienced. The only difference between us and Entrati is that when the Indifference shows up in our orbiter, right, and says, "Hey, kiddo," we don't speak back. But Entrati, being the scientist that he is and the inquisitive person, I would guess on the first or second or third time being visited by this entity that looks exactly like him, he probably started to ask it questions. Like a scientist would do. I'll bet you it's how he learned what he knows about the void. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But that's the only time that the Tenno actually speaks. And I'm not trying to say that the point that I was trying to make with that is that the Tenno isn't inquisitive in the same way that Entrati is. The Tenno would just look at and has looked at the experience more and like, oh, there's this thing that I have to deal with. Like, what the hell is that? Whereas Entrati would try to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, what exactly? And if the Indifference is willing to speak with us, like how it did at the end of the sacrifice, I can see no reason why, if Entrati, it showed up and said, "Hey, Al," or "Hey, little Bengal," right? And Entrati said, "What? Why do you keep doing this? Like, what do you want?" And maybe a dialogue began between the man in the wall and the Indifference, a dialogue that they maybe kept up. And what I said in a previous video was, who knows, maybe after that initial interaction, Entrati may have even built that vessel specifically and placed it there. And I mean, because look at how it's centered and how it's situated in almost like a ritualistic position in front of the chair. And then you have the man on the wall, like the headpiece thing that's carved into the very walls themselves. Like, is it so weird to think that Entrati didn't actually place that vessel there specifically for the entity to have as kind of an offering? Say, "Hey, look what I give you. Come talk to me. Here, talk to me through this." Do you know what I'm saying? What did you want to make me notice? Well, Luna, that could be the case, but bear in mind, just remember, Albrecht has already sacrificed so many to the void. So many. So if sacrifice is a necessity, don't worry. Albrecht has been doing it in spades. He's pumping execution and sacrifice out like it's the flavor of the month. That could be interrogation room. Could be another way. To me, well, we are technically a cavi if you think about it. Um, the only reason why I'm not 100% certain about, I don't know if I subscribe to the interrogation room thing is that I don't think Albert has any type of power over the indifference in any way, shape, or form. And I think the verbiage of his fear of the indifference, um, the kind of throw it against the wall and see what sticks mentality of trying to, um, what was the word that he used to confront it or to engage it? Well, I mean, I definitely think we're what, and who knows? I mean, we could have been part of another deal. I think that's what people forget. Like, it was Executor Tuval who was the main person in charge of the Zeraman voyage, right? And, well, given his place in the Uvan clerisy and understanding of the rituals of continuity in the void, and sacrifices being what they are, and the the executor through recordings in the Zeraman not really being too concerned about the the people of the Zeraman rebelling, and in fact just kind of like saying, "Well, shush with you then. Don't contact us anymore." Even though the whole idea of the Zeraman was that they were going to be able to save their their empire from ruin because they would start to rebuild. So these people would be like the most important Orkin if they were to go to Tau and rebuild it and make the new home for the elite, But no, don't worry about them. Screw you, citizens. You're left to your own uh, devices out there. Do whatever you need. We don't care any longer. That's a good question. How many deals did the man make that we don't know about? Well, again, though, one of the things we have to remember the only thing we don't know is the intentions of the indifference, especially when it came to the ending of the Whispers in the Walls, because the goal, according to Fibonacci, was to keep it there, correct? That was like the base idea that we needed to keep from the indifference having the ability to move around. Um, confined to one concept of the strands of Craw. Yet in the end, that's severed, and yet the indifference seems to be able to move wherever the hell it wants, including 1999. Oh, and also the Zeraman. So, what did we do again? I'm just saying. Well, I think the Tenno's shadow is his other. In the as Steve's was putting it there. Um, it's we all have that. That's that dark. That's that voice in your head that everybody always believes is their conscious, like their subconscious talking to them, their gut. But it's interesting that like your gut instinct tells you some really messed up stuff sometimes, like that you can't do things or don't do this because it would make you look weird or something like that, and really kind of hindering you. And it's that moment when you should learn that the voice inside your head is not your gut, especially all the time. And in fact, it's your shadow self. Your shadow self that is hell bent on protecting its own identity and thus, in many situations, acts against your personal intentions, which is crazy if you really think about it. So, but I have to be honest, all. We are coming to the end of this week's weekly Warframe chat. I have to get ready for dinner with my mommy and with the family here. So I do apologize again for starting a little bit early. It'll probably be more in the 2 to 4 range in the future because it seems like that's actually going to be the best time for people. But like I said, I wanted to get this out there, so I got a chance to hang out with you on this Sunday, this wonderful Sunday. Talk to you a little warframing, right? Oh yeah, the acolytes are their own whole other situation altogether. Yeah, I think you're really gonna enjoy the video we got coming this week. It's gonna be a good one, gonna be a fun one. Everybody just want you to have a wonderful rest of your day. Wonderful rest of your week, at least until I can talk to you over the video. And I will definitely talk at you next time. So, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful one. I'll see you. Bye.